It started on a Friday. Nothing extraordinary, just one of those quiet evenings you barely remember unless something disrupts it. And something did. Ellie told me in the morning she'd be going out with her girlfriends that night. She said it casually, in passing, like it wasn't even worth a full sentence. "Oh, Sarah and the girls want to grab dinner. Just giving you a heads up." I was brushing my teeth when she said it, and I remember pausing mid-swipe. We'd been married 7 years. I knew her rhythms. Ellie wasn't the spontaneous dinner with the girls type. She liked her routines, book and wine by 8 p.m., cozy pajamas by 9. When plans popped up last minute, she'd usually fuss over what to wear or whether she even wanted to go. But that day she seemed ready. Too ready. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself not to be that guy. The suspicious, insecure husband. I smiled, rinsed my mouth, and asked if she wanted me to order in or fend for myself. She just waved me off. "Eat whatever. I'll be back before midnight." Around 6, I heard her heels clicking across the upstairs floor. She was getting dressed early. I headed up with a glass of water and leaned on the bedroom door frame, sipping slow. She was standing in front of the mirror, curling the ends of her hair with more effort than usual. She looked good, gorgeous even. But something felt off. She wore a red dress. Not just red, tight, deep crimson, hugging every curve like it was designed for attention. I'd never seen it before. I was certain of it. "New dress?" I asked. She paused, then smiled in the mirror. "Nah. Had it for a while. You just forgot." I didn't press. I nodded and left, but her answer stuck like a splinter under skin. She left around 7:30. I heard the door shut and the click of her heels fade on the pavement. The house went quiet, and I sat with that silence longer than I should have. I flipped through channels, half-watched a basketball game, tried to convince myself that nothing was weird. But my stomach had that low, anxious churn I couldn't shake. At 9:15, I texted her, "Everything good?" She replied 10 minutes later, "Yeah. Sarah's venting a lot. Might be a late night. Love you." The message was too clean. Ellie usually texted fast and lazy, filled with typos or shorthand. This one was polished, like she reread it twice. That alone shouldn't have meant anything, but I noticed it. I noticed everything that night. Time dragged. I watched another game, cracked open a beer I didn't finish, and walked around the living room without purpose. By 11:30, I was half asleep on the couch when I heard a car outside. A taxi. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see her step out, still laughing like someone told a joke only she heard. She leaned into the window, said something to the driver, and shut the door with a grace that didn't match her usual clumsy late-night energy. She walked up to the door with a dessert box in hand. When she came in, her cheeks were flushed, not from the cold. She looked glowing, lit up from the inside. Her lipstick was smeared, but not completely gone. Not faded like from hours of wear. It looked wiped. Like she tried to fix it in the back of the cab and gave up halfway. "Hey, babe," she said, slipping off her heels without looking at me. "I brought you something sweet." Sarah was crying all night about Greg, so thought we'd at least bring dessert home. "Thanks," I said. I took the box and placed it on the counter, but didn't open it. I was still stuck on what I saw and smelled. Cologne. Not her usual scent. Not mine. A deep, smoky cologne I didn't recognize. Strong enough that it clung to her hair, her coat. There's no way that was an accident. You don't just pick that up by sitting across from someone at a dinner table. She poured herself a glass of water, took a long sip, and leaned against the counter, tapping her nails on the glass. Her eyes scanned the room like she was making sure nothing had changed. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded slow. "Yeah. Just tired." "You have fun." She hesitated. "Just for a second." "But enough." It was what it was. "Sarah's a wreck. We just drank, talked, nothing crazy." I nodded again. She didn't ask me how my night was. She usually did. Instead, she glanced at the clock, mumbled something about being exhausted, and headed upstairs. I stood in the kitchen a little longer, listening to the water running in the bathroom, to her footsteps crossing the bedroom. When I finally climbed up and peeked in, she was already under the blanket, turned away, pretending to sleep. I could tell by her breathing. I stood there for a moment, just watching. The glow in her cheeks had faded, replaced by a calm stillness that looked like peace, but to me it felt like distance. Like she had gone somewhere I couldn't follow. I didn't sleep much that night. I wish I could say I didn't have suspicions before, that it all hit me at once. But the truth is, this moment just tipped the scale. Something had been off for a while. Her new clothes. Her sudden love for late dinners with friends she hadn't seen in years. The way she carried her phone with her everywhere, even into the bathroom, into the shower, tucked under her pillow like a secret. But that night? That was the first time it felt real. Tangible. The cologne. The new dress. The red lipstick and half-hearted lie about Sarah crying. I didn't say anything then. I didn't accuse her. I just let the silence settle. Because sometimes when you suspect something, the fear of confirming it is worse than the lie itself. That was the night it started. Or maybe it was the night I finally started to see it. The morning after that strange Friday, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Ellie was still asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. I didn't feel like waking her. I didn't feel like talking at all. My thoughts were stuck on rewind, looping through every detail of the night before. But more than that, something had shifted inside me. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like I had crossed an invisible line, like the part of me that had always chosen trust was now just alert. Quiet, but constantly scanning. That's when I started noticing the little things, not for the first time, but with new eyes. Things that once seemed random or harmless were now under a new kind of light. Like how Ellie used to leave her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to shower. Or how she'd forget it entirely when we took walks. That stopped months ago. Now it was always with her. She even brought it into the bathroom when she brushed her teeth. And every time it buzzed, she picked it up like she was expecting a message that couldn't wait. I remembered one night, maybe a month back, when we were watching a movie on the couch. Her phone lit up just for a second and I saw a heart emoji in the notification preview. The name was unfamiliar. Just a friend from work, she said quickly, grabbing it before I could ask. You don't know him. I let it slide. But the way she said him stuck with me. The casual tone felt too practiced. Then there was the hair. Ellie had worn the same hairstyle for years. Long, straight, with soft layers. She always said she liked to keep it simple. But one random Wednesday she came home from the salon with a choppy bob and highlights. Just needed a change, she'd said with a laugh, spinning in the hallway like a kid showing off a costume. Do you like it? I did. I told her so. But something felt off even then. It wasn't just the hair, it was the way she glowed, the way she kept checking herself in reflective surfaces like she needed to see how someone else might be seeing her. Another time she asked me to grab something from her gym bag, headphones, I think. When I unzipped it, I saw a lace lingerie set tucked underneath her workout gear. Bright, expensive looking. I hadn't bought it. I didn't even recognize the brand. You treating yourself? I asked that night, trying to keep it light. She blinked, confused for a second. Oh yeah. I got a good deal online. Figured why not? I nodded. But I remembered that set vividly. She never wore it around me. Her taste in music changed too. Subtly. She'd always been into folk, soft indie playlists with acoustic guitar and mellow vocals. But recently she started blasting these moody, electronic tracks with deep bass and breathy voices. She played them in the car, on her earbuds while folding laundry, even in the shower. You into synth pop now? I'd asked once, teasing. She just smiled. It helps me focus. Focus on what, though? Around that same time she also started meeting friends more often. That's how she always phrased it. Meeting up with friends. But she never mentioned names, or if she did, it was always someone I couldn't verify, someone from book club or a work friend I'd never heard of before. Once I asked if I could tag along. Just casually. I was half joking. She laughed, but there was something brittle in it. It's just a girls' night. You'd be bored out of your mind. Besides, we talk about stuff you probably don't want to hear. I didn't push. I wanted to believe her. But something changed in me that day after the red dress. It was like I couldn't not see it anymore. Everything I looked at, every gesture, every glance, felt coded, like I was in a foreign movie with no subtitles. Even her side of the closet had changed. She used to cycle through the same 5 or 6 favorite outfits. Now there were new pieces. Leather skirts. Low-cut tops. Expensive shoes I'd never seen in shopping bags. She never told me when she bought them. They just appeared. And she started locking her laptop. Ellie had never cared about that before. She even used to ask me to log in and pay bills or double-check travel plans. But recently it required a password. When I asked about it, she said it was because of client confidentiality she'd taken on more sensitive projects for work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then I remembered something from a couple of months ago. A night when I came home early from work. Her car was in the driveway, but all the lights were off inside. I walked in and heard a door shut upstairs too fast. When I went up, she was in the guest bathroom brushing her hair like she'd been there the whole time. I thought you were working late, she said, surprised. I finished early, I told her, watching the way she kept avoiding my eyes. That night, the house smelled faintly of smoke, not cigarettes, not candles. Something like cologne burned into the air. I asked if someone had been over. She shook her head too quickly. No. Why? I shrugged. Smells like someone was here. She smiled, tight-lipped. Maybe the neighbors. You know how vents are. I nodded. I didn't believe her. But I nodded anyway. The moments kept adding up. A pattern forming. Quiet, calculated, and clear if you knew what to look for. And I was finally seeing it. Late one night, I scrolled back through our old photos. Vacations, holidays, birthdays. I stared at her face in each one, looking for signs. Wondering when the shift had started. Wondering if it had always been there, hiding in plain sight. I remembered our anniversary dinner the year before. She'd looked beautiful as always. But distant. Half her attention was on her phone. She said it was work, but she never showed me a message, never shared the joke she laughed at quietly over her drink. Another memory hit me hard. A weekend trip we took 6 months ago. She left our Airbnb early in the morning to grab coffee. Said she needed a walk. Was gone nearly 2 hours. Came back with coffee, yes, but also looking more awake, more alive than I'd seen her in days. When I asked why she'd taken so long, she said she got lost. We were 2 blocks from the cafe. I started writing these moments down. Not in a dramatic way, just small notes in my phone. A digital journal of red flags. I wasn't even sure what I was planning to do with them. Maybe I needed proof for myself more than anyone else. I wasn't ready to accuse her. Not yet. But I also wasn't ready to ignore the truth any longer. Because that's what it felt like now. Not just suspicion. Not a gut feeling. A truth. A quiet, undeniable truth whispering just under the surface of everything. Ellie was changing. Pulling away. Building a life I wasn't part of. And I didn't know what scared me more, the idea that she was already gone. Or the idea that she'd never really been all the way here. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything finally cracked. I wasn't looking for proof that day, at least not consciously. I'd come home early from work needing to print out some documents before a client call. Our home printer had been acting up, so I used Ellie's laptop. She had a newer model, faster, less temperamental than mine. I'd used it before and she never seemed to mind until recently when the password started changing. But that day it was already logged in. She must have used it in the morning before rushing off to work. She'd left in a hurry, coffee half finished on the counter, a lipstick-stained napkin next to it. I didn't think anything of it at the time. The laptop was open and a flash drive was still plugged into the side. A small, silver one with no label. I figured she must have been backing something up or transferring files. I clicked on it absent-mindedly, thinking maybe she left the documents I needed in there. And that's when I saw the folder. It was titled Miscellaneous. Of course it was. I hesitated. I knew this was a line, the kind of line you can't uncross. But something about that folder called to me. Like it was daring me to open it. Like it wanted to be found. So I clicked. Inside were several subfolders, each with vague names: dinner, weekend, notes. I opened one. And there they were, photos. Dozens of them. At first, they were harmless. Selfies of Ellie at a bar, clinking glasses with someone whose face was cropped out. A blurred photo of 2 drinks on a table I didn't recognize. But then I saw one that stopped my breath. Ellie in that red dress. Sitting on someone's lap. A man, dark hair, muscular arms, a tattoo curling up his neck. He was grinning, one hand resting on her thigh. She was laughing, her head tilted back. Her arm was around his shoulders. In another photo, he was kissing her neck. She was looking directly into the camera, smiling. Not caught off guard. Not ashamed. Enjoying it. My hands went cold. I clicked through faster, heart pounding. Another image, same man, different location. A dim room. Our bedroom. Our sheets. The striped ones I had changed 2 days before she said she was out with Sarah. The timestamps told the story. The night she brought home that dessert. The night she smelled like cologne and wore that unfamiliar lipstick. It was all there, cataloged, organized. I stared at the screen, every muscle in my body frozen. My vision narrowed. A silent roar filled my ears. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I just sat there, letting it hit me like slow poison. Ellie had cheated. Not in theory. Not in suspicion. Fact. And not just cheated, she had documented it. Why? I don't know. Maybe it was a backup, maybe a secret thrill. Maybe she never meant to leave that flash drive in the laptop at all. But she had. And now I knew. It felt strange how come I became. Like the fear, the doubt, the speculation, they all evaporated. There was nothing left to question. No more wondering if I was being paranoid. No more second-guessing the signs I had stacked up in my head like fragile dominoes. I had evidence. Undeniable, searing truth. I copied the photos to an external drive, encrypted it, and slipped it into my briefcase. Then I closed her laptop, unplugged the flash drive, and put it back exactly where I found it. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I realized something more painful than betrayal. She wasn't going to tell me. She never intended to. She would have gone on like nothing happened. Laughing at dinner. Asking about my day. Pretending we were still us. While he, whoever he was, sat in my chair, drank from my glasses, touched the woman I thought I knew. The house felt different after that. Like I could see every lie she told reflected on the walls. I wandered from room to room that evening, touching things we'd bought together, the rug from our honeymoon trip, the photo of us in Portland, the old clock she insisted we keep because it ticked like a heartbeat. Now all I could hear was silence. When she came home, I watched her closely. She was smiling, carrying groceries. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted stir-fry or pasta. I told her I wasn't hungry. She didn't push. She didn't notice anything different. That hurt more than the rest. She laughed at a video on her phone. Showed me a meme. Asked if I'd seen that viral dog with the glasses. I nodded. Pretended. My stomach churned. I looked at her hand. At the wedding ring she still wore. The one I gave her in a little garden behind my parents' house. That ring had meant forever. Now it felt like a lock I couldn't remove fast enough. That night I didn't sleep. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. I wondered if she dreamed about him. If she thought about him while lying next to me. At 3 a.m. I got up and stood by the window. The streetlights cast a dull glow on our lawn. I thought about all the nights I'd trusted her, protected her, loved her without question. And I realized something simple but devastating. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. The next morning I packed a bag. A quiet one. Just clothes, my laptop, the drive. I left a note saying I had a work emergency out of town. She'd believe it. She always did. But this time I wasn't coming back the same. When I left that morning, I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a trail. I didn't even pause to look back at the house. I didn't want to give her a scene she could twist into some dramatic story for her friends. No yelling, no confrontation, no broken plates or broken promises shouted across the kitchen. Just absence. Clean, quiet, untraceable. I drove for hours before I finally stopped. The cottage I ended up at was on the coast, nestled in a wooded inlet where no one would think to look. We used to rent it in the summer before life got too busy or before she got too busy hiding parts of herself. It was empty now, off-season and cold. Perfect. The air was damp, the kind that bites your lungs. The sea was only 100 yards away, waves slapping at the rocks like they were angry at something too deep to name. It felt fitting. I unpacked slowly, deliberately. Toothbrush. Jeans. Flash drive. Laptop. Everything had its place. I turned off location services on my phone, deleted social media apps, set up a new email account. No digital footprints. If she tried to find me, she wouldn't. And that's when the watching began. Not from paranoia, at least, not entirely. But I needed to know what came next. What she would do, who she would be when I disappeared. I still had remote access to our home security cameras. We'd set them up a year ago after a break and scare in the neighborhood. They were discreet, small, in corners, synced to cloud backup. She never thought much about them after installation. Just another layer of safety. Now, they were my window into a world I no longer belonged to. The house was quiet for the first couple of days. She came and went as usual. Her patterns didn't change, coffee in the morning, car gone by 9 a.m., returned by 6 or 7. She didn't call me. Didn't even text to ask where I was. Just forwarded a hope everything's okay message to my work email like I was a missing delivery package. Then, on the third day, he arrived. The man from the photos. The one with the tattoo on his neck and the confident, practiced swagger. He didn't knock. She opened the door for him like he lived there. Like I had never existed. I watched from my laptop as he stepped into my house with the casualness of someone who belonged. He dropped his keys on the same tray I used for mine. Took off his jacket. Kicked off his boots. Walked straight to the kitchen and poured himself a drink from my whiskey collection. She came into frame wearing my robe. They kissed. Laughed. She leaned against the counter like she had the first night I met her, carefree and magnetic. He wrapped his arm around her waist and said something I couldn't hear. They looked like a couple playing house in someone else's memory. I watched them make dinner. Chicken, maybe? Something simple. She chopped vegetables while he played music on the Bluetooth speaker. My playlist. The one I made for our road trip to Oregon. It felt like watching two actors perform a well-rehearsed scene, except the set was mine and the script had been rewritten without me. I should have been furious. I should have wanted to smash the screen or drive straight home and throw him out with his boots behind him. But I didn't. I felt, still. Because now there was nothing left to doubt. It was all true. All of it. Every hesitation I'd had, every gut instinct I'd silenced, every late night I'd spent wondering if I was crazy, they were validated, frame by frame, in high definition. She wasn't mourning the distance between us. She had already replaced me. That night, I poured myself a drink and reviewed our joint bank statements. I don't know what I expected to find, but it didn't take long before something stood out. Transfers. Quiet ones. Spread out over several months. All small enough to go unnoticed if you weren't looking. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. All sent to an account under the name Elise Harper. Harper was Ellie's maiden name. I stared at the screen, my breath caught between a laugh and a growl. She had opened a separate account, using her old identity. And she was stockpiling cash. For what? A future without me? I hired a private financial investigator. Within 48 hours, I had the full picture. Ellie had been funneling money from our joint savings into her solo account for nearly 8 months. She'd also been quietly applying for credit cards in her maiden name, building up a parallel financial profile like she was preparing to become someone else entirely. She wasn't just cheating. She was leaving. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't alert the bank. I didn't change the passwords just yet. I needed time. Time to get every piece in place. I saved the camera footage. Every visit he made, every night she wore my clothes or drank from my cups with his fingerprints on her skin. I downloaded the financial documents, highlighted transfers, noted dates, created a timeline. Then I copied everything to a secure drive and backed it up to an encrypted cloud archive. I made a list of the assets we shared: house, car, stocks, retirement. I contacted our family lawyer under the pretense of revisiting our estate planning. I booked a meeting with a divorce specialist. Quietly, discreetly. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for control. Because that's what betrayal teaches you. Once you've been lied to, your sense of safety is shattered. And the only way to rebuild it is brick by brick, layer by layer, with no cracks left for someone else to slip through. A week passed. Friends started calling me. Not to ask if I was okay, but because they'd heard I was the one acting strange. That I had snapped, vanished, gone, off-grid. Ellie was worried, they said. She doesn't know where you are. She's just trying to hold things together. Hold things together? She was holding on to a new life. But I realized then she was getting ahead of the narrative. Spinning her story before mine could surface. She was painting herself as the victim. The abandoned wife. The one left behind by a man who just wasn't himself lately. I didn't respond to anyone, not at first. I needed a single move to clear the board. I called her son, Thomas. He's 23. Smart. A little impulsive. Looks too much like her sometimes. But he deserved the truth, my version, not the one she was preparing. We talked for an hour. I told him I had left to think. That I wasn't in danger. That everything would make sense soon. I didn't name names. I didn't sling accusations. I just told him I was working through something. He asked if Mom was involved. I said, you'll see in time. I hung up before I could say more. Before the weight of it crushed me. Then I called our financial advisor and put restrictions on all transfers above a certain amount. I moved our family archives, photos, documents, videos to a private cloud locked behind a legal firewall. I restructured my will. I made sure that if she wanted to leave, she would leave with her share, nothing more. No sentimental leverage. No stories spun in her favor. Just truth and what was rightfully hers. I had no intention of fighting dirty. But I also had no intention of being the fool again. That night, I sat on the porch of the cottage and watched the fog roll in off the sea. The waves whispered the same thing over and over again. She made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I knew from the start that disappearing wasn't going to be enough. Ellie wasn't just betraying me behind closed doors, she was already shaping the story of my absence before most people knew I'd left. That's the part that hit me harder than expected. Not just the infidelity. Not just the secret account. But the fact that while I was still absorbing the wreckage of our life, she had already started crafting a version where I was the one who lost control. A week into my self-imposed exile, the messages started rolling in. First from a mutual friend, hey, just checking in. Ellie said you're going through something. Hope you're okay. Then from another, saw your wife at the store. She looked worried sick. She said you left in the middle of the night and haven't called. And then more, midlife crisis? Heard you were off the grid. Ellie said she's giving you space, but she's scared. Scared. Worried. Concerned. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so calculated. She was laying the groundwork, framing the story for anyone who might ask. Painting me as the unstable one, the runaway husband, the erratic figure in a marriage that had been fine until I decided to unravel it. It was clever, really, but it wasn't going to work. I'd built too much in my life on truth. My work, my friendships, my reputation. I wasn't about to let her script make me the villain in my own story. So I started making calls of my own. Not dramatic ones. Not gossip-filled or accusatory. Just facts. I started with Thomas. We had already spoken briefly, but now I told him more. Carefully, piece by piece. I didn't show him the photos, he didn't need to see his mother that way, but I told him enough to connect the dots. That his mom and I were not aligned anymore. That I had uncovered things I never imagined. That he should trust what he'd seen in me his whole life, not what she was telling people now. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I knew something was off. She's been too polished lately. Too careful. He offered to come stay with me to help however he could. I told him no. That I needed to do this alone for now. But I promised I'd keep him in the loop. Then I contacted our financial consultant, the one who'd helped us build our retirement accounts and set up college funds for Thomas. I told him plainly and professionally that any significant financial moves from our joint assets now required my approval. Legal, above board. No emotion involved. I updated every shared login, froze credit lines, and rerouted mail. I notified the bank of the activity under her maiden name. I didn't try to shut down her account, I wasn't trying to trap her. But I wanted the record clear. She was planning an exit. And now so was I. I went through every cabinet of our digital life. Every backup folder, every cloud account. I moved our family photos to a new drive, encrypting it and backing it up in triplicate. I created a legal inventory of every major asset we owned, homes, cars, savings, investments. I submitted everything to my attorney. I wasn't emotional anymore. I was meticulous. And through all of it, I kept watching. The camera footage became a nightly ritual. I no longer watched to confirm what I already knew, I watched to measure the distance. To see how far she would go now that she thought the narrative was hers to tell. The man kept coming back. He stayed overnight now. Slept in my bed. Used my towels. Sometimes even wore my shirts like he was trying them on, not for size but for power. They laughed a lot. I heard it even through the faint security audio feed. Not just little chuckles, full, rich belly laughs. The kind Ellie and I used to share over wine at 2 a.m. when we felt like the only two people on earth. But she never once mentioned my name. Never once looked over her shoulder. Never once hesitated when she closed the door behind him. It was as if I had been erased. Which only made me more certain I had to act. So I reached out to our attorney again and scheduled a full case review. Not a divorce filing yet, I said, but a readiness package. A term he used for clients who wanted to gather all the legal and financial chess pieces before the first move. I made it clear I wasn't interested in public mudslinging. I didn't want this in court, tabloids, or circles of judgment. I just wanted clarity, control, precision. He nodded. We'll keep this quiet, but thorough. I gave him copies of everything, financial transfers, timelines, even blurred versions of the photos. Not to hurt her, but to establish cause. To build a foundation of truth. Then I prepared the personal side. I called my brother. He was shocked. Angry. Protective. What the hell do you need? He asked. I told him a place to land if it comes to that. He offered his guest house. Said I could stay as long as I needed. I thanked him but declined. I wasn't ready to leave the coast yet. The sea was starting to feel like a part of my healing. I even called my old therapist, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Booked a telehealth session. Told her the story in fragments. Her first words? You're more grounded than most people I've seen go through this. It didn't feel like grounding. It felt like swimming just above drowning. But I appreciated her words. As the days went on, I noticed a shift in Ellie's energy even through the camera. She got quieter. Not somber, but restless. She stopped cooking. Stopped dancing around the kitchen. She spent more time on the phone. Less time laughing with him. Their dynamic changed. It wasn't new and fun anymore, it was routine. Boring. Normal. She began to pace. She began to look at her phone like she was waiting for a message she didn't know how to ask for. She was looking for me. Maybe not to apologize. Maybe not to reconnect. But because the absence she had asked for had arrived in full force and now she had to live with it. Then came the turning point. A friend of mine, a mutual acquaintance, really messaged me out of nowhere. You okay? Ellie's been saying some things. That you're unstable. That you disappeared and she doesn't know what's going on. I stared at the message for a long time. Not surprised. Not shocked. Just done. I replied, thanks for checking in. She knows exactly what's going on. And in time, so will everyone else. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. That was the moment I realized something important. Ellie could spin the truth. But I didn't have to spin anything. I had the truth. And sooner or later, the truth makes its own noise. It happened unexpectedly. 3 weeks after I left, I walked into a small cafe near our old neighborhood, the kind of place that played soft jazz and served overpriced cappuccinos. I was meeting a contact for work, but before I could even sit down, I saw him. Him. The man from the photos. The one who thought he was clever enough to live in my shadow without ever getting burned. He was sitting by the window, sipping coffee with one hand and scrolling through his phone with the other. He looked relaxed. Like someone who believed the worst was over, that the damage was done and he could now settle comfortably into the ruins. I stood there for a moment, not moving, just watching him, watching how unaware he was. And then I walked over, slowly, deliberately, and sat down across from him without saying a word. His eyes met mine and he froze. He knew exactly who I was. Hey, he said, his voice faltering. Listen, No, I cut in. You don't talk. You listen. He swallowed hard. I'm not here to make a scene, I said calmly. And I'm not going to cause you problems. But I need you to understand something very clearly. He nodded, silent. I know everything. Every time, every message, every night. I know the way you came into my home. I know how she opened the door. I know what you drank, what you wore, where you slept. I know the robe she wore afterward. I know all of it. His face went pale. I know she told you I didn't know. Maybe she said we were already falling apart. Maybe she told you we were just roommates. But now you know that wasn't true. He stared at the table, ashamed or just caught. I'm not here for an apology, I said. This isn't about you feeling bad. This is about clarity. You were a pawn in a lie you didn't bother to question. Now you know where you stand. He started to say something I didn't mean to. But I stood up. I'm not your problem anymore, I said. But she will be. And I walked away. A year passed. I didn't think it would happen this way, that healing could be quiet. But it was. No explosions. No final confrontation with Ellie. Just the slow, steady process of becoming myself again. I moved north, bought a small house near a lake in Oregon. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. The kind of place where mornings smelled like pine and the evenings were quiet enough for real thinking. I started working with local universities, consulting on archiving systems. It kept me busy, grounded. Thomas came to visit one weekend. We sat on the dock and fished like we used to when he was a kid. We didn't talk about Ellie much, but when we did, it wasn't angry. Just factual. She was in the past. And he, like me, had started to understand that not every story ends the way we imagine, but that doesn't mean we can't start a new one. One morning, I received a letter. A simple envelope, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Ellie. She said she was sorry. Not just for cheating or for lying, but for the way she rewrote our ending before it had even finished. She admitted to manipulating people, to building a false version of me to protect herself. She didn't ask for forgiveness, but she hoped I was okay. She hoped Thomas was okay. She hoped I had found peace. I folded the letter and placed it in a box I keep in the closet, my archive of the past. A physical reminder of what I'd walked through. Not to reopen wounds, but to remember the lessons. Then I stepped out onto the porch, took a deep breath of cold morning air, and opened my laptop. I had a family tree to restore. A new chapter to write. And this time I knew exactly where to begin.